Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 107 of the ITSM crowd. We are on to our final episode looking at the evolution of IT service management. And our topic today is enterprise service management with global, guru, thought leader, influencer, social media legend, Matt Beran. Matt, introduce yourselves. Tell everybody watching a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having me on, Claire. I'm going to steer clear of that guru and thought leader comment. I'm just a curious dude who just loves IT. I love IT service and support. The people in this industry, I've just fallen in love with them. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, starting off right out of college from a customer service center experience into enterprise IT service, and then shortly thereafter into consulting, ServiceNow implementations, and my most recent venture, which is a go-to-market for a new service management solution based in Argentina. So,
Wow.
great industry to be a part of, and thanks for having me on. What a cool topic.
Yeah, it's a fabulous one to dig into. We've touched on it before, but I think it's uh, we've only started scraping the surface with enterprise service management. For anybody watching us live, you can ask your questions to Matt using the YouTube comments. So please do that. We love to hear from you. And also, if you've got experiences you want to share, we're interested in those as well. So what are your experiences of enterprise service management? Please do interact. It is all part of the experience. But Matt, you're just back from Service Management World. Real conference, real people. How was it?
It was real fast. And there was about 300 to 400 people, I would say, total, which is fairly small for a conference, especially this one. But as my community members continue to remind me, it's going to take us a couple of years to get back to the heyday of what events once were.
Mm-hmm.
Spoke on this topic actually there and got some really great questions. I actually purposely only took about half of the speaking slot to present on the topic because, like you said, it's not something new. It's something that we've covered before. And so I wanted to make sure that that second half could really be focused on what is your specific challenge, because it's all about context here. Where are you at in your journey, and what are you trying to accomplish?
Yep, so true. And I think it's a strange one because we've been talking about enterprise service management for, I don't know, 5 years plus. But still, if you go looking for something like a simple definition, it's hard to pin something down. So I always like to start by nailing down the terms that we're actually talking about. So what is enterprise service management to you?
Yes, excellent. And I say this actually in my presentation that it's not something I'm trying to convince you. It's not a new paradigm. It's not a new thing to learn. But apparently, Forrester coined the term 11 years ago or 10 years ago.
Wow.
Something. It's apparently much older than I expected. And when you go searching for the definition, you'll find a very inside out definition, a very IT focused approach to enterprise service management. And they'll describe it as taking what we've learned in IT service management and applying it to other areas, which is very inside out focused. But really, all it is leveraging what we've learned in service management across the enterprise and across other departments. And the trap that I warn people on for this journey, the trap that I try to help people avoid, is simply taking what we've done in IT and service management and cookie cutter replacing it into other departments.
Yep.
Rolling out an HR portal, rolling out a finance portal, a legal portal, and separate knowledge bases for all those things. Because the real advantage is in combining those things and not thinking about us as separate silos. We are shared services. We should be shared.
And is this part of this wider shift that we're seeing at the moment, where we're talking about, value streams and employee experience? Is this all pointing in the same direction?
Without a doubt, 100%. In fact, I would go so far as to say that ESM isn't really the thing that you're aiming for. It's not the outcome. It's not the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And employee experience is really, that's what was underneath our noses this whole time, is that employee experience. If we think about what the goal of service management actually is exposing those services to the end user, making them consumable, making us all much more powerful. And the same thing can be said in those other departments. As far as like onboarding is a clear-cut example where
Yes.
multiple teams are involved. You have that structured, coordinated work that needs to be structured and coordinated to deliver success. And the outcome is an incredible employee experience. And I would say the same thing for just service management in the IT space alone. The same thing applies, where the outcome isn't necessarily service uptime, fast resolution of incidents, clear root cause analysis definition. The real outcome is a positive employee experience. It really is that service delivery. It's a philosophical mindset change, and one that's, your mileage may vary depending on your culture, depending on your organization, but employee experience is really the goal.
Yeah. And I mean, we're both, I think, sort of similar tenures in service management, 20 years in. And I kind of laugh that we're still talking about onboarding and offboarding, because it was an issue back in the day, and a lot of the problems there were things like access management, which we've moved on so far with that. And a good friend of mine started a new job, and I saw him on LinkedIn, and he's got, I got my water bottle, I got some chocolate, I got my branded notebook, and I went, have you got your laptop? Can you log on yet? No. So I mean, what are companies doing at the moment? If we're talking about, spreading some of this across into HR, finance, logistics, whatever it might be, what do you see there in these organizations that you're talking to? Is there nothing? Is there sort of embryonic service management? What's there now?
Yeah, I like that. Great question. When it comes to combining these things and delivering a great employee experience, it is about sharing space. So avoiding those turf wars, specifically when you're getting started. Onboarding is a perfect example where managers may have gone to an IT portal to request the laptop, the access for that employee. And then maybe they went to another HR portal, or they called up HR to get that person paid, get their background check. And then they went to corporate security to get them to badge and make sure they have access to the right offices and some cube space or hoteling space. And so ESM can coordinate all those things. Not only can they coordinate those things, but they can also have them as standalone services. Cube moves is a great example where, onboarding, you just need to set up a cube. Well, that's basically a cube move. And segregating those services, if you think like a microservices approach, or even just separate shared delivery models approach, it's nice to have that cube set up as a specific thing that you can request. You could see this being super useful when you're moving entire departments. That's 30 cube moves. So it's about those work units and breaking them up, but coordinating them together. That really is what you're trying to do. And the whole time you're trying to fight the resistance to change.
Yes.
It's going to take a lot to get people to think about things this way. IT has always done it this way. HR has always done it this way. Well, now we are going to do it separately. And there's, of course, a ton of other challenges that relate here, like the fear of transparency. If we can see what everyone's doing, are we going to try to manage them down to be too efficient and lose some of that value? And then, of course, there's the fear of just losing your job, through that automation. And then one of the last things that I always try to caution people against is IT's bad reputation. If you've had a failed self-service portal, or your self-service portal isn't gaining the kind of adoption the attraction and the ROI that you expect. What's to say it's going to be any different in the HR space or the finance space? Getting those teams into that same bad experience is not something they're going to want, right? So you got to build up your reputation a little bit,
And I think that's one thing that I've seen in this type of change is maybe not so much IT's bad reputation, but people sort of holding on to what they've got, and they see this as a land grab. IT's trying to spread outwards. They want some of my budget. They want some of my people. What are the sort of the cultural changes that need to happen for this to work?
Excellent. I love that. That's such a good way of putting it, because it's cultural, it's behavioral. It's helping people understand the view of the employee. And so oftentimes I will suggest to people that they start by conducting user research. It's a lot easier to convince people that change needs to exist when people say over and over that change needs to exist. And so that might mean coming to the table with user research, doing the investment of that user research. I'll never forget the first time that we were doing user research on an HR portal, and we called up, I think it was in the warehouse for a major retailer. And we're talking to the manager and we're saying, we're going to develop this HR portal. How are your employees going to use it? And the manager literally says, we don't have computers. Right. So the probability of those employees using the portal is very, very low. And it's not like you're going to not roll out an HR portal then, but you take that and you realize, okay, we need to staff phones. It just has to be part of our strategy has to be taking calls from those employees and, doing a little bit more hands-on with them. When instead of notifications going out via email or posting them on the portal, we have to call that department up and do some proactive case avoidance in the HR space, for example. So coming with some of that research to the table makes you look powerful, makes you look like you care, makes you look like you're not tone deaf, and really gives you an advantage to get people to start thinking about these things. And even if they don't act on it, even if you can't convince stakeholders, hey, this is how we should approach this thing going forward, you've at least planted a seed and sort of opened their minds to the thought of listening to customers. The other thing that I oftentimes will suggest is if you are turning around the perception of IT, is to share your success stories.
Yes.
If you've launched an IT portal once and failed, and then the second time you learned and had better success or a higher adoption rate, you can use those statistics and those stories to help. And then the third thing that I kind of willy-nilly just throw out there as an option is to run a simulation. I just love simulations as a learning tool. I don't know that there's an ESM simulation that works more than others, but you can see how having a prototype enterprise service portal and walking people through that experience, and just like every other simulation, taking the Deming cycle of plan, do, check, act in between rounds of the simulation and using that to show people how we can improve. That's another great way to win minds.
Yeah. And user research is such a great tip. And I don't know why it surprised me to hear you say that, because quite often we're so focused on, got to win over the board, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. But of course, go talk to the people who will be on the receiving end of these changes that we're making. And it applies to any change, not just thinking about enterprise service management, but it's so often neglected. And that's a real sad thing, I think.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that has happened in the last few years is massive acceleration in terms of, digital transformation projects, adoption of collaboration tools, flexible working. Do you think that the pandemic and the sort of the organizational response, has that accelerated the adoption of enterprise service management?
Yes, definitely. And either through those changes or through ESM, that's the opportunity to take advantage of those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Things like, I mentioned at the beginning, it isn't cookie cutter, just rip and replace. Like, okay, IT's got a knowledge base, now HR should have one.
Yeah.
Really, the knowledge base is our knowledge. We own it together. Oftentimes it needs to coexist and live together because the articles are related to each other. Onboarding, again, perfect example. But it's also about taking advantage of that change when you're going through it. So if you're taking the time to deliver HR knowledge articles, that is the time where you're going to think about, how do we want these written? And it's all about questioning the way we've always done it. Is it time to improve, right? Because your HR maturity might be such that if employee A has a problem, they call up their HR rep, they get the answer that they need, they go back to work. And that HR rep might be leveraging their own tribal knowledge, Post-its on their monitor. Back to the days of old school IT. That's how we ran IT. The knowledge articles were literally articles, and you thumb through them. Like, these are the 10 steps to install Outlook on your PC. These are the 10 steps to take PTO on your HR journey. So it's about taking that opportunity to say, what is the experience when someone goes to the HR portal and they search for PTO? What are they doing? Are they requesting it? Are they reading through a lengthy policy doc that's 10 pages long and somewhere in there is their answer? Well, this is the opportunity to rewrite that knowledge article. Leave that policy doc out there because legal requires that you have it out there. It has to be accessible to your employees, but you're going to add another article. And this is the TLDR, human readable, awesome knowledge article that right at the top says, this is how much PTO you have. This is how much you gain per day, per week, per month. These are the rules for taking it. Here's how long it takes to approve it and take it. And here's your payouts for it if you don't use it, or rollover patterns, or all the stuff that the employee cares about should be in that human readable format so that they get what they want and they can get back to work. It used to be a call and now it's an article. So that really is where I think about how you can use the change in your organization to migrate and mature ESM, or you can take your ESM initiative to change and mature your organization.
Yeah. And I think I'm just going to pause briefly and say, people watching live, chip in with questions, feedback, comments. We would love to hear from you. But I think one thing that's been running through my head while you've been talking, and you mentioning, the old paper knowledge articles and Post-its on the screen. And I guess in theory, you could do ESM with a spreadsheet. I'm sure somebody somewhere is, but it seems to me like this is just screaming automation. And I know you're in the solution space. How critical is the right platform for this to work?
I love it. Such a good question, because it is an opportunity, right? And there's things that we can definitely copy that totally make sense to copy. Single point of contact, like that concept isn't new to IT. Sometimes it's new in the other parts of the organization. So that's one that really helps. It helps on the journey. It helps with the employee just going through that experience, not having to think about, because they don't want to have to think, do I have to call this person or this person or this person? Just call my company. I need a laptop from my company. I have a policy question from my company. And it may be a luxury to hire an ESM team, or like a service center or a level 0 team that just takes all calls from employees and then routes them to the appropriate escalation points in the various departments. But you could see how that would be a major, major advantage. The other thing that I'll say in the space is that having that flexibility to drive that automation is, of course, a massive opportunity that's just sitting there. HR commonly will have routing rules. There will be a business rep in HR that takes calls and tickets from these 2 or 3 departments. And that's really just so that they can have that human touch, have that personal service representative in HR that always works, my team always works with Kathy. Call up Kathy and she'll help out. And that's something that we
Kathy
could actually
left.
exactly. That's something that we can learn from HR. That human, that lived experience, you can see how that already provides this white glove feeling that could exist for your IT teams, that could exist for your facilities teams, that HR is already doing without a system. So there's that. And then, giving them that flexibility so that when these 3 teams put in a ticket for HR, it gets routed to Kathy, because that way Kathy gets that same improvement initiative, or that bump up in opportunity that IT has always had, while still delivering that personal experience and giving the employee experience the reputation it deserves. I think another thing, and there's so many where you could learn from each other. SIAM is a perfect example. Your podcast is coming out for ticket volume this week, and we covered SIAM in detail. Yep. And HR is another great example where they're sourcing so much. When's the last time HR actually ran a background check on someone? No, of course not. They give that to Sterling or some other third-party service. So SIAM is another one where we could cross-learn from each other, and there's some huge advantages to gain there. And then the other one that I think about commonly is that we could learn from in IT from maintenance is preventative maintenance, that we could learn from facilities. Replacing technology and tools before they're broken. What a novel concept, don't you think?
It's a revolution.
So there's so much to learn and so much to benefit on getting these teams working together. Not only can they learn from service management being applied to their areas, but also service management can learn from those areas as well, I believe.
Yeah. And I think, just like in SIAM, we talk about this collaborative approach. I think that's such a great tip for success is, this isn't IT coming to say, look how clever we are. Look at how we do everything brilliantly. It's kind of, what do you do well that we can learn from? Here's what we think we do well. Maybe you can learn from us, and that then has everybody in the organization driving forwards. So I'm sure in the tech space as well, there's a lot of application for digital workers. I mean, are you seeing people do cool things with, AI or machine learning in this space?
Not really. Most of what I've seen in the space has been rudimentary. I think part of it is because a lot of it was driven by the pandemic and the clear need to onboard, transfer, offboard employees. A lot of what I did in 2019 and 2020 and 2021 was build things for that specific thing. We knew that staffing was going to be a concern. We knew that churn was going to be a concern. And that really is where I think a lot of the initiatives, at least in the last couple of years in HR, have lived. How do we get more? How do we improve the experience? And how do we, churn through employees better? The other challenge that I see people running into is how to do this without a massive budget, without a $3 million budget. How do I actually do this in my organization? Because there's desire, like authentic grassroots desire. How do I bootstrap ESM is kind of the question that a lot of people ask. And so a lot of times I'll point people towards the design lifecycle and towards human-centered design principles and training, because that, I believe, is where you can take some of these agents and generalists from HR that are interested in doing this and excited about doing this, and train them up, get them that internal consulting experience, that process mapping experience, the user research experience, and they really are your experts. They are your internal consultants. So that's kind of where I see a lot of people having questions about how they can bootstrap it. And that really is my advice, is to have the people doing the work try this stuff out, try out new ways of working, try out new ways of collaborating and building these processes. It can be a Kaizen blitz, it can be a full-blown workshop. There's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah, that is great advice. And then once those successes start to happen, that's when you hope that somebody with that budget, pays attention and says, we could do with more of this.
Exactly.
So I think we'll have people watching this who, everybody's tired after the pandemic, thinking, okay, more things to do. I guess to look around an organization and see red flags, what would be kind of the typical red flags that should make our viewers sit up and think, I need to start thinking about ESM?
Yeah, opportunities for improvement, because that really is what you're looking for. And design thinking will get you starting to think in these ways. Where are the gaps and opportunities between our teams, between our shared processes? You kind of see it happening now in ITIL, where we're focusing more on value stream, more on co-creation of value. And a lot of that means that we're looking at processes and procedures in a much more open way.
Yep.
As opposed to saying, this is the incident box and this is the problem box. It's more like, here's what we do for incident management. Where is the value? And we're looking for extracting that value. And I think when you're going through those exercises, whether it be from a straight up ITIL, IT, continual service improvement lens, or a leadership, either organic ESM, enterprise service management, or project-based enterprise service management, where we've got multiple teams coming together, the goal is to really take that opportunity to see the whole thing, to ask who else is involved, who else are we serving in this process or with these services, and through those mapping exercises, through those exploration exercises, you're identifying your gaps and your opportunities to improve. And it might be something blaring. You might be hit in the face with the fact that you're sending 3 surveys for every onboarding request, or the employee doesn't get their password day one. We sent it to the manager. The manager, doesn't read their email and doesn't hand the password to the employee. Well, those gaps and opportunities should appear on your maps. They should appear on your journey maps, your service blueprints, however you're visualizing this work to do the continual service improvement and do the service mapping or the service value chaining, however you want to map it or visualize it. That's where you're looking for those gaps and opportunities. So you can be doing ESM without even saying we're doing ESM. It's just really a process improvement initiative of some kind. So that's really, I think, where you end up finding all those gaps and opportunities, and then labeling them, prioritizing them, and having those stakeholders build them with you. Because once they see the same gaps and opportunities you do, it's not a matter of trying to convince people. You won't have to convince facilities not to send that 3rd survey, because they'll see, oh my gosh, we're sending 3 surveys. Duh. We don't need to do that. It's so obvious. Let's combine our surveys, bother people less, get more value, and really drive those continual improvement initiatives.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So many great practical takeaways in there, and kind of focusing in on what ESM really is. Matt, where can people learn more about you? Where can they see more of you?
Oh, excellent. We explore these topics all the time on my podcast, Ticket Volume. You can go to ticketvolume.com to subscribe. Find me on LinkedIn, Matt Beran. or on Twitter, Matt Beran, or now on the Fediverse, you can find me, Matt Beran at hackaderm.io. And all that can be found interchangeably on all of the other platforms. Just connect. You'll find
Fabulous.
it.
Thank you. Our next episode is the last one of the year. So December 13th at 8:30 a.m. GMT. I'm going to be joined by Simon Dorst and Michelle Major Goldsmith from Kinetic IT. We're going to recap some of the data from this year's Global SIAM survey and just wave goodbye to 2022 and have a little look ahead at what we think is coming up. But really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I loved it. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Really, really appreciate it. And we will see everybody on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd.
Thank you, Claire.